stop sharing my screen. I'm going to invite Martinus Evans to the stage. Hi, Martinus. How are you?
What's up, Gina? How you doing?
I am doing phenomenally well. We just got through, I don't know if you were a part of this, but we just got through kind of the overview. You are our first speaker. So we are kicking things off with our very first People Magic Summit. And what I love about you being our first speaker is you've been a part of our extended Mighty Networks world for a while now.
Yeah.
From when we were not as big as we are now, and when fancy people were not on Mighty Networks. And so here's what I would love your help with in this opening session, which is I want to see who's in the audience right now that is like, easy for I saw this earlier this week when I was posting about the summit and I was posting about our speakers, and I saw somebody who was like, it's easy for you to say because you have all of these things given to you, or you can do this because, you know, somebody has a massive social media following, or because you have an email newsletter or an email list for the last 10 years. So, of course, you can create a community. And I want to just point out neither of those things were true for you. So maybe you can start and share where 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 were you and how did you get to this moment? And this moment being a wildly successful community, a best-selling book with a second book on the way, uh, a front page New York Times feature story on what you do and how you do it, as well as an incredibly important story for where you started and where you are today. So maybe with that, I can open the floor and you can help us all hear what
All right.
it's like to start from scratch.
All righty. So how did everything start from scratch? So 2019. Let me take everybody back. 2019, pre-pandemic. Do you remember what the world used to look like before then? I did. Um, a little bit about myself. I was just a runner. I ran maybe one or two marathons during that time, and I was just upset with what the running industry had to offer me as a larger individual, as a slower runner, as somebody who's in the back of the pack, but paying their money to be a part of this running community. I was upset, very upset with what was going on with the community. And I knew that there were other people out there who were experiencing the same thing that I was experiencing. And one of the things that I just started to do, or just started to think about as I started to run these races and meet other people, was why aren't we together? Why aren't we in a community together? Why aren't we celebrating our wins?
And
And
these are these back of the pack runners, like
yes,
people that are finishing like a lot longer than like the last person before them.
absolutely. So think, on average, an average marathoner will probably finish a race around 3 to 4 hours. We're talking about people who are finishing races at 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, right? So these are individuals who are just left to fend for themselves. And I was one of those individuals, and I felt like there needed to be something out there to support us. If the running community at large wasn't going to support us, then we needed to find a way to support each other. And that's where the idea for Slow AF Run Club came from. And yes, it started off with literally zero people. And one of the things that I did to help get over that initial hump was to share my story and share why I'm doing this. Also share the journey of building this thing. And then the thing that really took off was helping out and pointing out the pain points of other individuals that were inside, or that wasn't inside of this community, but they knew they needed to be inside this community.
Yeah. Yeah. And When did you know? Because, if we go back to that period of time, you started running, you started a blog, which I love, and then the blog turned into did Instagram come next after
Yes.
the blog?
Next.
And then the other thing that I think is so important about your story, um, and maybe you can share this experience, which is you followed all the gurus at that point in time.
Yeah.
You followed all the people that told you to build an email list, launch a course, think about community later, like after you have your funnel and your automations and your tags and your this and your that. And that it had happened right before you and I met each other. So maybe you can share that story because I think it's
Oh
a
man. So let me tell you this. Yes, I followed all the gurus. Any guru that you can think of when it comes to business and on building an online business, I bought their course, I followed their methods, and so on and so forth. So much so that yes, I built multiple email lists and they failed. I created a course, and this is something I think I told Gina as I was talking about Mighty Networks. Is like, yes, I built the course, and I followed all the gurus. 5 people joined that course, even though it took me thousands of dollars to build that course. And somewhere in the middle of that course, 2 people flaked out. They even joined the course. They just paid and not even do it. Another person got injured in the course because they didn't listen to anything that I taught. And then the other 2 people was like, "Hey, like this is not what I really thought I was going to get. Can I have my money back?" So, like, that was my experience, and I was fed up. I was literally
yeah,
fed up with all of this of, all these gurus saying it's gonna be easy. All you gotta do is build this course. If you build it, they would come. And yeah, 5 people came, but when it was all said and done, I impacted nobody and I was out of thousands of dollars.
right. Right. And I
So
think I had just met you after that when you were kind of in the regrouping phase.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we should say how we met each other because it's one of my favorite stories.
I'll let you tell that story. But what I would say is, yes, I met Gina at a very interesting point of my life of having these failed courses, doing this failed email list. I done spent all of this money following these so-called gurus, business gurus who really made their money on building businesses or who made their money on teaching people how to build a business, but that was originally their business, right? And I was fed up. And meeting Gina, and one of the things that we was talking about was, well, why haven't you built a community? And I was like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? The
So
guru.
I'll share my story. So before the pandemic, I worked out at a gym around the corner. It was like a boutique gym. So it was like, only about 20 people were in this gym at one time. So it's me, it's my trainer. And all of a sudden, this guy starts cleaning near us and starts cleaning, the equipment near us, starts sweeping near us, and strikes up a conversation. And he had, no idea that I did business stuff or community stuff or had like created some of the things that I've created. But what was so fantastic about me, my trainer Jarrell, and our new friend Martinus is that we started to have really interesting conversations. And this was before I had launched the precursor to People Magic Profit, which was community design. I had not launched a course yet. I was totally intimidated by running a course, even though we had built courses into Mighty Networks. I thought you had to have like a PhD in like online courses or like SCORM or something, because everybody we talked to who wanted us to build online courses into Mighty, this is like 2019.
Yeah.
They all seemed like they had been doing it forever. So finally I was like, okay, I think I'm going to launch my own course. I think I'm going to launch my own course. So a few weeks before I was getting ready to launch my own course, I'm at the gym and I'm like working out. And all of a sudden, Jarrell and I have this new friend, Martinus, and Martinus starts telling us his story. And his story is incredible. And his story is, wait a second, I've built this in it, pretty special thing with my blog and my Instagram account. And I launched this course. It didn't work. I don't know what I'm necessarily going to do next. And we started sharing our stories. And what was so fun is that Martinez knew he did not want to do a Facebook group.
No.
So at the time, Facebook groups were like, oh, well, why wouldn't you just do a Facebook group? And he's like, I don't want to do a Facebook group. And what was really fun was while I was like trying to work out, Martinez was not only peppering me with questions, but challenging me with like, well, what about this? Why would I do that? But I could do this over here. And it was awesome. And so I launch the first version, my very, very first course, the Community Design Masterclass. About 300 people joined. Martinez was one of them. And here was the thing, this is such an important lesson that I learned from you, Martinez,
Mhm.
which is when you do things live, just like we're doing right now, not only do you learn a ton in the chat, but for the things that I nailed in community design, I heard about them pretty quickly. And for the things I got wrong in community design or were a little bit fuzzier in community design, I heard about those things immediately. And I'd never done this before, so it was such an important lesson. So literally I came in, I think it was like week 3 or week 4 of a 5-week course.
Mhm.
And I was like getting ready to work out, and Martinez beelines for me and is like, Gina, I absolutely do not understand how like the launch math that you are sharing doesn't make any sense. And here's why. And I realized at that moment, I'm like, oh my God, this is my secret weapon or my magic elixir, if you would like less violence in your life, is when I can surround myself with my own community, I'm going to get feedback so much faster. And so not only did Martinez take community design, but I'll hand the microphone back to you.
Mhm.
Um, you started thinking about how you could turn your 300 pounds and running Instagram account, which I think at the time had about 25,000 people in it,
Yeah.
into something that was that community. What was that process like for you as you were learning about some of these things, and what was the hardest thing about it?
Oh man, I'll start with the hardest thing. The hardest thing was just getting out of my head, right, and not being my worst critic and being my worst enemy, and trying to outthink why this wasn't going to work. That was
Mm,
probably the hardest thing. Um, I would say what I learned through that whole process is how quickly and how easily it became when I launched the Slow F Run Club. Literally, we launched this thing. We had less than 20 people. And I learned so much just from those 20 people, interacting with those individuals, asking questions, answering their questions, so on and so forth, that it really helped me grow and foster this thing to what it is today.
yeah. And so this was 2019.
Hmm.
You launch Slow AF Run Club, and something happens in March of 2020 that changes the course of not only the Slow AF Run Club, but also all the opportunities that presented themselves to you. So
Absolutely.
maybe you can talk about that transition a little bit.
Absolutely. So what Gina's talking about is COVID-19. Um, so let's even back up. Like when
And
I
people, running is one of those things, you because you were sponsored, but you got a sponsorship from Adidas. You're like going to all of these marathons, you're running them. Turns out marathons aren't great when everybody has to stay at their house.
no. So yes. uh, so one of the initial things that I thought about when it came to Slow F Run Club was that, what would it look like just for groups of people to come together and just run races together? So, like I said, this thing started off about 20 people, and we were figuring out what races are we going to run for the next year, and figuring out who's going to run what race with who, and figuring out travel plans and so on and so forth. March 2020 happened, COVID-19 happens, and literally day by day, oh, that race we were going to run, it got canceled. Oh, that race you was going to run, that got canceled. And the next thing you know, these people, including myself, had 0 races on the calendar. So now we're sad and we're depressed. And a lot of members is like, well, like, what's the point of even being in this thing? Because this was the goal. And for myself, I knew in order to stay active and motivated, I had to run races. I had to get that carrot of a medal. And I created a virtual race called the Slow AF Social Distancing Shuffle. And I got a medal made and things of that sort. And I remember talking to the company in China, and they was like, "Oh, you need 100 medals." And I remember being scared out of my mind, like, I don't know how in the world I'm gonna cover this 100 medals because it's only 20 people in this thing.
Mm.
So then I promoted this race, and I let the people inside the community also promote this race. And this race, when it was all said and done, sold, I believe, 6,000 race entries. You do
Whoa.
the math on 6,000 race entries at $45 a pop.
Wow.
I had to get some more medals.
You had to get some more medals.
But that was the start of the boom where it came for Slow F Run Club. And from that point on, I completely switched the idea and the model of what I had for Slow F Run Club, people just getting together and running races, to really understanding there's a whole population of people out here, adult onset runners, who wants to get active and have no idea how to do that because they too also are afraid, they have been shamed, so many other things that they've had happen in their life. And I end up being the Sherpa to let them know that, hey, if I can run, I think it was, 4 marathons at the weight that I was weighing, then you can do it as well. And let me show you how.
Yeah. So I just want to, put a pin in this for one moment. Not only did you identify your first transition, so your first transition was people who were not sort of accepted runners who
Mm.
wanted to run their first marathon, into realizing that the transition, so from point A, not doing anything, to point B, having run their first marathon and then running more marathons, to a broader transition of adults who wanted to be more active, wanted to run, that didn't know where to start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't know where to start. Now, for you, this also created, as Slow AF was growing, it also created more opportunities for you. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you turned Slow AF into multiple other opportunities? The one I'm thinking about is one that I read
Okay. So let's
as
talk
a
about
as
that.
a hint. As a hint.
So yeah, I actually have that next to me. So during that process of all of these people coming inside of Slow F Run Club, the barrage of questions came. And literally, I became a servant leader and asked and answered every question that anybody asked about running. Do you run about speed? Do you run about speed first? Do you do distance? What shoes to wear? So on and so forth. And then somebody in the process was like, yo, you have this amount of information. You should write a book. And I was like, you know what? I should. And I went on a process of figuring out how to write a book, write a proposal, and this is the end product. The Slow AF Run Club, the ultimate guide for anybody who wants to run. This book ended up getting picked up by Penguin Random House, which is one of the largest book publishers in the world. And since it's been out maybe about a year now, this book has sold over 30,000 copies. Out
where's the, like, shock emoji? Let me do that guy. Do you wanna just say also, like, most books that go out, 30,000 copies is
Mhm.
the what, top 1% of book
Yes,
sales? Yeah.
top 1%. 30,000 copies sold within this first year. Most books in this whole life of a book does not sell over 2,000 copies. This book itself has sold over 30,000 copies, and which has created this whole other thing about multi six figure book deal that came along with it. Speaking engagements. Something else that also happened with this thing was a 50 date book tour across the United States. Now that now we're moving from virtual community to actual in person to meet, touch, and really feel these people. And these people can feel me to say, hey, you really changed my life.
So I just wanna stop there for a minute. Holy guacamole. Um, the other thing is the strength of the community was one of the things that the publisher looked at.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. There's this whole process when you have to write a book proposal, so on and so forth. I won't go deep into that. Maybe I'll write a course on that and create a community about that later on today. Um, but yes, as I'm talking to the publisher, and by then, Soul Run Club has grown from those 20 people to now 5, 10, 10,000 people inside this community. And as I'm talking with the publisher and I'm letting them know all the ways that I'm going to promote this book, one of the ways that came out was I'm going to do this massive book launch party inside the Slow F Run Club. And that was something they really liked because it was novel, but also it has never been done before.
Right.
So when we start to do this, we had this whole virtual street team of people who would go and promote this book, who would go to their local libraries and request a book, who would go to their local bookstore and request a book, that would go buy multiple copies and put it in the little libraries and so on and so forth. Like this campaign was amazing. Like within um first week sales, when you even just thinking about the book, we sold roughly 6,000 copies in the first week, which is almost unheard of.
It is unheard of.
Mhm.
And now, one of the things I'm curious about is, how many people in the chat think that you first have to create, a massive following, a massive audience, and then, of course, then a community? Or that you have to create a massive audience and an email newsletter, and then maybe you get to have a paid membership later on? How many people are like, yeah, that's Gina, it's called a funnel. If you haven't heard of it, you might want to like look at the internet and learn about being a okay. I see I
Mhm.
got a couple of ringers in here in the chat. But one of the things that I think is so awesome about your story, and we see this all the time at Mighty, is when you start with a community, you actually feed not only these opportunities, but you can feed your audience. So your audience actually gets bigger if you have this community of people who are connected to the mission, but also when you reach people who have that sort of singular transition, they have more motivation to meet each other and more motivation to take an action that includes the really concrete things that go into sales,
Yeah,
go into the action that you are doing.
absolutely. And I think that's the most wonderful thing is understanding um the amount of people lives that you're changing
Yeah,
by building this community. I
yeah,
would have not known that I would be even able to sell 30,000 copies. Like Gina, when I
yeah.
met you, was cleaning toilets at a gym. So to go from
That
that
is true.
no. Yeah,
That
like literally cleaning
that was true.
toilets at a gym to creating this massive following, this massive community, and be able to have some of these outcomes that that I would never ever thought of. But it's because of the community that I built with the Slow F Run Club
Mhm.
that is the reason all of this stuff have happened, and it's
Yeah.
going to continue to happen.
Yeah. One of the things I am seeing in the chat is that idea, I have to have a lot of people. And I have to have a lot of people to start, because if I don't have a lot of people to start, then there won't be enough people to provide value for each other. And I just want to stop and reiterate, or just shine a big fat spotlight on something Martinez said. He started with 20 people. And I think one of the things that social media has uh, distorted is this idea that you cannot start a community with less than like 100 people, and it's just simply not true.
No.
So you can start with 10 people, and hopefully, I'm noticing, by the way, some of the things with People Magic GPT, where they're like, oh, you just 10% of people will be active. We're seeing that number actually grow month after month. So your percentage of active members or your percentage of active members versus the total should be roughly 30 to even 40%. And the smaller the number, the more people will be active.
Mhm.
But I just want to really stress that the more that you put pressure on yourself up front to have a lot of people and build this massive funnel, or like, God forbid, go and buy meta ads to be able to seed your community. Like, when you hear Martinez's story, that is not what ultimately allowed him the opportunity to create the Slow AF Run Club.
Can I also add something, Gina? It's the fact
You're
that I
kind of the
have.
guest. You're kind of the guest. So you can actually like talk all you want.
So I would say it's the fact that I started off with 20 people to really understand, like, to validate the ideas that I had and the ideas that they wanted, and try to figure out how to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And having those 20 people is what really helped me do that. You can't do that with 1,000 people or 100 people. Like, there were times where I missed the mark, and it was just a simple delete and, hey y'all, my bad. I didn't get it right. But it's a lot, that repercussion is a lot bigger once you have um a larger community.
Yeah.
So if you're just starting out and you don't know where to go, I would aim for a smaller community. So that way you can figure out and learn together. But it also helps build loyalty like nobody's business. Those 20 people are still like my ride or dies. And during the book tour, I had somebody that lived in Chicago and went to California, Washington State, so on and so forth, just to help me with the book tour, just because they were so invested in the success of the Slow F Run Club that they just wanted to help. And that's the only way you'll be able to do that is when you are building something from that small point and you're growing together.
That's profound. That's
Thank
profound. Thank you. All right. So sharing, where are you now?
Oh man.
So we're past the 50 city book tour. I want to stress, as somebody who was kind of watching that from afar,
Mhm.
um, what you did in terms of creating the IRL relationships from the digital community. That is something that has been so inspiring to me and our team at Mighty Networks. We think that it is actually the thing that is going to be the future, especially as more and more things online become synthetic.
Yes.
So maybe you can just spend a few minutes sharing, what was that like? Let's put exhausting over on the side, because I totally know there were multiple times you and I would be texting and you're like, I am tired. which is totally valid. But maybe share a little bit about what you learned and what you saw from the book tour. And then I'm going to fix some lighting here
Okay.
because the sun is coming through my face.
That's
So go, Jem. IRL is in real life. So the physical community as a physical thing, in addition to community as a digital thing. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So talking about IRL, right? That's something that um when you build this community and you initially just see these people as just profiles, right? And as you meet them in real life, you understand that these people have real lives just like you are, and they know more about you. It's something about meeting somebody for the first time and they break into tears and tell you how much you have influenced their lives. Because, like I said, we're just behind a screen. And you really don't understand that, yes, there's real people on the other side of that string that's also dealing with something. So I think that was
Mhm.
by far the most impactful thing. I
Right.
think the second impactful thing is like tangible sales. Like it's one thing to sell like a virtual membership and things of that sort, but to sell a tangible item is by far one of the hardest things that you can do.
Mhm.
And being able to turn and help encourage this group to not only be some of the best cheerleaders for me, but to also turn that into actual buying power is unmatched. It's
Mhm.
definitely unmatched.
Wow.
So when talking about what's for the future for Slow If Run Club, um, 2025 and beyond is one of the things we're looking at. How do we build this hybrid community of IRL and virtual community? Like,
Right.
how can we do more things in person? How can we have? How can we start to create um, overall chapters, Slow Your Run Club chapters all over the nation?
Mhm.
So that not only people are meeting in the virtual world, but also they're meeting in real life and actually have an impact in their own tangible community. And then overall, like how do we then turn that into our own events, whether it's the Slow Your Run Club race, the Slow Your Run Club conference. Those are the things that really excite me going forward.
Mhm. I love that because it's the same things that excite us, and we are working on things as we speak to be able to create one of the things that we have in the platform, and I think you guys have used it a lot at Slow AF, is members near you.
Yes.
So, unlike any other platform out there, we at Mighty Networks have members near you. And because we have members near you, it allows for you to find, and you'll see this when you go to peoplemagic.mn.co for the Countdown to January challenge, is you will be able to find members who are near you to be able to start that. What is there right now is a V1. It is a first version. It's just the beginning. Because going back to kind of the opening session, advanced software and yes, AI is going to be able to connect people. And then one of the variables in terms of being able to connect people is connect people who are near each other.
Yeah.
And I believe, and I think you share this belief having been on that 50 city tour, is we're kind of getting bad at people stuff. Like, like, it's just too easy to be out in the world and, okay, I could talk to this person that I'm afraid of, or I could be on my phone. And what we're really looking at is how do we use the phone to basically be like, "No, go talk to Martinus because he's rad, and this is what you guys have in common, and this is what is possible."
Yeah.
And I would also just make a plug for talking to people out in the real world. That is what Martinez did with me. And before he knew what I did or what the whole opportunity could be. And just think that that is really powerful. Okay. We have got some amazing questions, and I love what is happening in the chat right now. But I have But we are not done, Martinus
All
Evans.
righty. I got a sip
Um,
of water. I'm ready.
so as you think about this move from digital to in person or IRL or in real life, when you when you think about your priorities going into January,
Mhm.
what does that look like? How do you think about January? Now, again, you have some other things going on in January beyond the Slow AF Run Club that you may or may not wanna share.
No, we can.
Uh,
It's
and,
private.
um, and so I think this it actually speaks to another piece of why community is so much more powerful and why people magic and creating people magic is so much more powerful than having to maintain a social media account or having to maintain an email newsletter, having to maintain content. And maybe you want to share a little bit of how you're thinking about the next few months. Um, and then I have a final question about 2025.
Absolutely. So the main thing, or one of the things that's coming up for me, is fatherhood. So we have a little one on the way, and
Mhm.
it's one of the things that I'm thinking about is how can I be present during during those baby bonding moments while also keeping the community running. I think the cool thing is some of the features that you already have, like that infinite question generator. Chef kiss, right? So that helps with keeping the community active. People people are asking questions, answering questions, so on and so forth. I also
Mhm.
think that I've done a great job of modeling like what I want the community at large to participate in. So those things are cool, right? I think the thing that I'm really thinking about next year is what does that really look like to make that jump from a full-time virtual community to this
Yep.
hybrid community, and what does that even looks like? What does the offerings even look like? Do I have
Right.
to get insurance? Like, these are things that, me and my team are just thinking about as we help grow this thing, right? Like, does it make sense to, um go full virtual? Does it make sense to go full IRL? What does it look like to really think about various chapter leaders and how do we grow that inside of the actual Mighty platform? Those are
Yep.
things that are really top of mind, and I
For
know,
us too.
yeah,
For us too.
and I would say I know that Mighty has my back when it comes to that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it does. So, I saw the question about the infinite question engine. So, one of the things that we talk about in People Magic Profit, and we'll show you if you are interested, is questions and polls are some of the most effective way to create a community that runs itself. And the reason is that members talk to each other after they've answered questions. But the question cannot be, hey guys, what do you think? The question actually needs an unlocking expression or unlocking phrase and the topic. And it has to be something that people can answer initially in less than 15 seconds. And then what happens is that the conversation takes off in the question or the poll. So that is something that we have seen generate the most engagement. So I saw a couple of questions about engagement, like how do I get my community to engage? Questions and polls are absolutely critical
Yeah.
and with AI, we have the ability to take the purpose of your community, why people are coming together, and generate questions based on that formula of unlocking phrase and topic related to your community. And so, because of that, you are able to set up this infinite question engine, um, get a bunch of questions, polls that you can put into your community and then schedule them in advance. So, as you schedule them in advance, it means that notifications are triggered for those questions and polls. Members come in, they answer them. As they answer them, they get notifications when other people answer them. And we have seen more relationships built through questions and polls than any other feature on a Mighty network. So that's what the Infinite Question Engine is. Uh, you can also just look at the unlocking phrases and put it into the People Magic GPT and be able to get some really good questions as well. I think that that's true. I might have just made that up, which would not be the first time or the last time that I do that. And then the other thing that I wanted to just add in terms of like how we have your back, one of the things we have wanted to build, and we are now in a position to build this over the next probably 9 months, is what I've talked about since I think you and I met, Martinez, around the dynamic meetup. So the idea would be the following. We can see in the software who are Martinez's most active members in Palo Alto, California. So let's say the top 2 most active members in Palo Alto, California. And let's say Martinez has another 25 members in Palo Alto and Mountain View and Sunnyvale. I'm just naming cities that are close to Palo Alto, California, but basically in a 25-mile radius of Palo Alto. We have all that data in Slow AF Run Club. So now imagine Martinez can decide to turn on a dynamic meetup, and the software gets to work to basically say, hey, Gina, we see that you are our most popular or most active member in Palo Alto. First of all, congratulations. Do you want to host a meetup? There are 25 other amazing members of the Slow AF Run Club in and around Palo Alto, California. And we know that if you want to run this 2 weeks from now on a Thursday night, you're going to get 60% attendance because that's what we see on average happens. Do you want to do this? Let's say I'm looking at it, I'm like, that sounds really fun. Let me go ahead and do that. Or I'm like, nah. Then, by the way, we go to the next person. Then all of the hard work. How many people have had this hard work where you have to like make sure everybody's coming? Like, yeah, it's just like, hey, dudes, we're still doing this thing on Thursday at 6:00. Well, the beautiful thing about software is it can take all that work off your hands. All that work off your hands. So now Martinez can organize that hybrid experience where members near each other can actually meet up and they know why they're meeting up. They know what they're going to do together and they know who each other are so that when they show up, it's more like a reunion than an awkward networking event.
I love that.
That's where things are going. That's where things are going. So, Martinez, kind of final question here before we go to questions.
Okay.
One of my favorite questions, as a matter of fact, which is, what do you want to be able to do a year from now that you can't do today?
Go to space.
I
um,
mean, that doesn't look like it's too far off.
that's an interesting question. What do I want to do now that I
What do you
can't?
want to be able to do a year from now that you can't do today? Because there's a lot of great things that you're able to do now today.
I think one of the things I really want to be able to do now is to launch a 10 chapters in our most popular cities, as well as launch the first iteration of the Slow Your Front Club conference. That's what I want to do in the next.
Ooh, I love now is the conference gonna be now that everybody knows what IRL means, is the conference gonna be, like, in real life?
Yes, yes. It's something that I'm dreaming of. Like I want this whole conference. I want this big expo space. I want people running. I want people having fun. I want music. So that's the thing that I want to do in the next year.
I love that. Alright. That's fantastic. Okay, and I have to so when you think about music, who would be your headline musical artist/act?
Oh man.
I know, I'm like the hard hit this is like 60 minutes, Martinez. It's like 60 minutes. This is like hard-hitting journalism.
um, Bruno Mars, truthfully.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yes. I
All
think
right.
he'll get running vibes.
Everybody heard it here first. 10 chapters in most popular cities. First in-person conference expo with headliner Bruno Mars. All right, let's go to a few questions.
All righty.
All right. All right. What is as you think about it, what is the value that your Slow AF members are gaining from being a part of the community?
Um, there's a lot of value that they're gaining. I think first things first is now they are no longer alone. They're no longer alone. They are part of a community that A is going to support them and celebrate them through all their wins and whatever hurdles that they got. So I think that's the first thing. I think the
Mhm.
second thing is having direct access to me, especially as my notoriety is growing, 50-day book tour, speaking, things of that sort, knowing that being in a Slow Your Run Club, that is one of the direct ways that you can get direct access to me. And
Mhm.
then I would say the other thing is that when you are going on a journey, it's one thing to do it alone, but it's another thing to do it with a group of people. And there's research that shows that whenever you do hard things, you want to do it with a community because it makes it perceived
Right.
easier.
I love that. Um, all right, this is a great question. Would love to know what kind of effort it takes you now to run the community and what does that lifestyle look like? And remember, people always assume it's more work than sometimes it is.
The effort these days, oh man, I don't want to say zero, but it's very low effort. Thinking about a day in a life of what it looks like to run a Slow F Run Club now, I maybe check it twice a day, and that's because I want to make sure that everybody question is being answered, or at least somebody has a comment on their post. And I spend maybe 2 days out the month to plan and schedule content. But big shout out to the like I said, the auto question generator, because most of the time I can just go through those, approve the ones that I want to go out, select those, schedule those, and add in my own flair. And that's it for the rest of the far as like managing the community.
Well, and I think that that is not you're not alone in that. One of the other things that we see is that's been a huge just taking that admin off your plate. The other big thing is these new things we will be continuing to launch around automations, around being able to cluster members together, and these dynamic meetups that we've been, mentioning in this opening session.
Yeah. But I would say for people who are out there who are thinking about how to grow or just even like how to keep people engaged, my motto when it comes to Slow Life Run Club is never miss a handshake. So
Mm,
what that means is whenever somebody's asking a question or posting, that's like them putting their hand out. You don't want to leave them hanging, right? You want to make sure that you're reciprocating as well. So that's why I still spend, I'll still go in there a couple days. I mean, a couple times a day just to make sure that everybody's getting a handshake.
I love that. I think you've done a really great job with your 20 ride or dies, where they're also making sure
Yes.
that nobody puts their hand out and doesn't get a reciprocal handshake.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. Um, all right, another question. What was the book or books that inspired you to write the book?
What
Talk
was
about a
the
meta
book?
question.
I know, right? What was the book or books that inspired me to write this book? Um, I've read there's not one particular book in mind that I can think of that helped me inspire. What I would say is that using my experience as a slower runner and reading all of the running books when I started running and learning to run, even going to get a run coach certification, right? They give you this book that's called the Jack Daniels Guide to Running, right? And they tell you, like, oh, this is your Bible when it comes to coaching people. And I remember during the running coach
Wait,
certification,
it's literally called the Jack Daniels
yes, it's called the
Guide
Jack
to.
Daniels Guide to Running.
And is it followed up by somebody saying, "No, not that Jack Daniels,
Yes,
a
all the
different
time.
Jack Daniels"? 'Cause
All
as
the
soon as I
time.
heard that, I was like, "Really?" Like,
Yes.
in addition to making amazing American Kentucky bourbon? Okay, great. Um,
Give me one
Guide to
second.
Running, wow.
So it's literally called the Jack Daniels Guide to Running. And when I got that book, and I remember just flipping through it and looking at some of the methods on how they was training people. And I remember being like, none of the stuff makes sense for what I'm trying to do.
Mm.
And I think that was I would say, the book that really inspired me to say, I need to write a book with all the information that I've learned, all the workarounds when it comes to running that has
Right.
made me successful.
Wow. I love that because instead of it and I find this a lot, getting inspired by something that you're like, "No." Like, getting inspired by no, not, "Oh, I wanna be like that." It's
Yeah,
like, I see the gap in
yeah.
what's out there, and I think that that's true for any entrepreneur in any new kind of offering. Okay, I got another question here, which is Scott asks, "I'd love to hear how and why you grew it. Was it all word of mouth, or did you have a marketing strategy? Did you use ads, for example?" And then we'll go to like, how did you keep people engaged? So I think that there's this sense of, and I have my own, my own observation here on some of these, but how did you get those first 20 members, and then how much do those 20 members bring in the next wave?
So how did I get the first initial 20 members? Social media, right? I did have a smallish following on Instagram. So I would share my journey and share my story and let people know, like, this is what I'm trying to do, right? And literally take people along the journey of building it out, sneak peeking, and so on and so forth. And as I did a beta group or whatever you want to call it, those were the people who joined, and those are the people that really I interact with. Um, I would say growing it, the the virtual race was one of the main things that helped grow the community. Because literally we had a few hundred in there, like it was growing slowly. But when 6,000 people sign up for a race that you've like initially created and it's presented by the Slow AF Run Club, people want to know more, people want to stay, so on and so forth. So we literally had a percentage of people stay over from those events. I've never have invested not a single dollar into ads, no Facebook ads, no like no ad dollars in general. Everything has always been word of mouth, and like I think I would say that's my superpower is that I love when it's word of mouth. And then the other thing that really helps out is this fly merch, right? Like, we've created merchandise that
Mhm.
has also have its own six-figure leg. And this merch is one of the things that becomes a talking point when people are out in the world running races wearing this merch. People want to know where they got it from. They want to know the backstory of it and so on and so forth. And that then also turns people want to join the community because they've seen somebody else run a race wearing it or wear it out in the world, and they love what our motto is, and they also want to be a part of the community as well.
That's amazing. I know from my own experience wearing my neck
uh,
thing, a lot of comments. All right, we are running up against time.
all right, what else you got?
So, why don't we have one final question, which I think is great. It's from Monica. What kept you going when your numbers were low?
Oh, I
Which
think
I would also reframe to, we have just spent a bunch of time talking about the fact that 20 members is not low.
no.
You are doing something different at that phase than you are doing later, but you've got to have had moments where things felt like they were going slower than you wanted them to go.
All right,
How
now
did
I'm about to get in my Martinez Luther King bag. All right, I've been to the mountaintop, and I'm here to tell you this: everybody starts at zero. When I started running, I did not know how to run. I couldn't even run for 15 seconds. Now I've ran 8 marathons. Like it's literally everybody starts at zero because that's the part of the process. Like if you started off and you got millions of people in the community, then you didn't start at zero, right? But if you start at zero, it's a part of the journey. It's a part of the journey to figure out that there's this thread that you're trying to help, right? And I think for a lot of people, they think, oh, it's the money, it's the all this other stuff. No, like really what it's about is helping people get from point A to point B. And for me, that's from not running to running, right? So if you focus on that and you continue to foster those people, the numbers will come. Literally, the numbers will come. Like that. That's. I would say that's the least of that should be the least of your worries.
Right.
Like the most important thing that you should be worrying about is really figuring out like how, what is your message, and what are you doing to go to cultivate the people who are actually there. There's this article that I read years ago about 1,000 true fans.
Yeah.
And I think that that notion is still true. If you got 1,000 people paying you $100 a month, then you don't have a problem. You got
Right.
business. So I really think that we really need to stop focusing on, oh, it's I got to have all these people. It's not that. It's about how do you provide um, what the people you have need, and how do you impact them in a way that they go out and become your biggest cheerleaders.
Yeah.
That's the thing you should be worrying about.
Well, we will take Martinez, the inspirer, any day of the week. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to just an amazing first session and an amazing